but we have Eric on the line. I'd like to bring Eric on because, Eric, are you here this morning?
Hello, Mike. How are you?
Good. Good to hear from you. So, Eric...
It's bright and early in Washington and freezing cold, but I'm looking forward to the free firewood that Bernie is going to provide if he wins.
Well, that's what I wanted to dive in here with you. You have enlightened me and I think spoken some real truth as far as what socialism can do. And your take on socialism as a whole, I think, should be more widely known because it's so enlightened. And I think that it's an excellent perspective and an excellent viewpoint on what the Democratic or presumptive nominee at this point, because I don't see a path that Bernie does not become the nominee for the Democratic Party, is pitching. So why don't you, for all of Virginia, explain what you think about, democratic socialism, communism, the whole kit and caboodle.
Well, Mike, it's not what I think. It's what history has shown. Socialism fails everywhere it's implemented. It is not about free college. Socialism is a political ideology that turns the state into an instrument, basically, of evil, that deprives individuals of their individual rights to choose, to have economic freedom, and it imposes upon those individuals choices that are beyond their control. When you think about socialism, we're not talking about Denmark and Norway, as Bernie would suggest.
But they would like for you to think that it's Denmark. That's what they want to push.
Those are social democracies where the government, which is elected, collects revenue through taxes and spends it on social programs. That is not what the radical Democrats or the so-called progressives are pitching. What they're pitching is that the state or the public begins to control businesses and industries, and then it redistributes profits and wealth as they see fit. So Bernie's proposing not just government-controlled health care, which, by the way, is not available in every country of the world, as he suggests.
No.
Somalia, for example, does not have it. But he also wants to have government-controlled energy production. He wants to nationalize energy, which reminds me a lot of Venezuela. It's what Cuba does, it's what the Soviet Union did, and it's what North Korea does. And there's no example in history of any government or country working at all or promoting its people through socialism. To put it this way, Mike, socialism kills, capitalism inspires.
And that's a beautiful and eloquent way to put it. So, Eric, I'm very familiar with your work, but for the people out there in Virginia to understand, you run a public affairs firm. You have done, PR campaigns and campaigns across the world, and you've seen and been privy to information, and you understand this on a kind of a granular level. Because why don't you just give your background? That way, everyone can understand exactly how you have come to have such an informed opinion on what socialism, democratic socialism, and what Bernie is pitching is.
Well, unlike my children, I do not spend my day on TikTok and WhatsApp. I am a recovering journalist. As you know, I was a foreign correspondent in 1999 through 2001 in Spain for Reuters, and prior to that, I was a wire reporter for the Wall Street Journal. So I met a lot of interesting people, interviewed a lot of interesting people, and I moved back to the U.S. a little bit after 9/11 to start my career in public relations consulting. I worked for 1 year for a U.S. senator as his communications advisor, and I've been working for private industry for the past 17, 18 years.
Well, private industry cannot be thrilled with the idea that Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, or any of the other folks running for president on the Democratic side could be, president of the United States. They are pitching ideas and proposals that, in their sheer concept, are bankrupting. There is no conceptual mechanism for them to pay for the items that they want to, have implemented. They don't even know where the money is. They can't find the money.
That's what's scary. So let's take what quid pro quo Joe said the other night at the debate. he said that Bernie's plan is going to cost us $50, $60 trillion. We don't know, and even Bernie doesn't know what it's going to cost. At least what we know that some of it will cost will be roughly $30 trillion, and the remainder amount that we need to come up with is bigger than the entire U.S. economy. So, Mike, do you know where that money's going to come from? Because I do.
Me. It's going to come from you and me.
No. It won't come from you, because that's the first $30 trillion they're going to take from us. They're going to run us into debt.
Well,
and the debt is going to be serviced by money from China. China owns 27% of U.S. debt, and they are pumping money into our economy because we're borrowing money from a rapacious authoritarian regime. The more debt we acquire, we're going to get it from China.
Well, it's interesting you bring up China. I want to, inform our listeners. The person we have coming up at 6:35 is Gordon Chang. I'm sure you've seen him on Tucker Carlson. He's widely known for his book, The Coming Collapse of China, which he actually published in 2001, and it actually wrote about the hidden non-performing loans of these big four Chinese state banks. It details out the communist government and all of its failings. So China is going to be a large topic today here on the John Fredericks Radio Show. But Eric, let's dive into, we still have plenty of time. Let's talk about that Democratic debate. I know that we're a day late, dollar short, but it was magnificent to behold. I mean, wasn't it something else?
It was.
Who's your winners? Who's your losers? Handicap it for us. You're very eloquent, well-spoken. Who do you think was eloquent and well-spoken? Who do you think was stuttering and stodgy?
It was so entertaining. I had my young children watching with me, and they were laughing the whole time. Mm-hmm. They said what the Democrats were doing is what kids their age call roasting each other.
Yeah.
Skewering each other with one-liners and so forth. I think the winner was 100% Donald Trump.
Okay. Excellent.
There's no way that anybody on that stage showed me anything remotely close to an ability to eventually, in 4 or 5 months, walk on stage with the president and beat the president, let alone hold their own. You've got people who, and Amy Klobuchar, are shaking and quivering. You've got Pete, who sort of staring off into space. You've got Elizabeth Warren, who's yelling. You've got Joe Biden, who can't have a full sentence without stuttering and stammering. And you got Mike Bloomberg over there on the left, rolling his eyes, looking
condescending. Oh, it was awful. He did not want to be there. Well, for good reason. I mean, they made him look like a fool.
He basically, in the first 3 minutes of the debate, set $500 million of his own money on fire because he was unprepared and unwilling to engage. And, you can't run for president or run for anything behind television ads. People want to meet you. They want to talk to you. They want you to be interviewed. They want you to be vetted. And he's unwilling to be vetted, so he has hid behind those ads to get himself on stage. And now his only shot, in my estimation, to become the nominee is through a brokered convention.
I agree with that. A brokered convention of which, by the way, they would take away that nomination for Bernie in a heartbeat. I mean, the superdelegate is a rigging.
Yeah.
Now, what's interesting to me, and I worked on the 2016 Trump campaign, is so you look at Michael Bloomberg and Donald Trump, and let's just objectively call them both billionaires from New York. And that's about, I think, the extent of which they have similarities. Donald Trump did rally after rally after rally in front of tens of thousands of people week after week after week. He would call into Morning Joe. He would call into CNN. He would call into Fox. He would go on all of these shows, and he constantly put himself out there. And I ran Virginia. I ran 9 other states, and I have to tell you, they weren't exactly pouring the money in during the primary campaign. We were a lean, mean, meritocratic machine. I mean, the entire allotment that I had for media in the Virginia primary, which was a big primary for Donald Trump because Marco Rubio had basically staked his claim on this state, I had $18,000. Now, I think Michael Bloomberg sneezes, and that costs $18,000. I mean, the sheer disparity between the two and their ideas, this is basically populism versus paid-for progressivism. There couldn't be a more stark dichotomy, and I'm wondering how that message can, begin to permeate, because here in Virginia, Michael Bloomberg has effectively paid for most of the candidates that now sit in the State House. I mean, in a Commonwealth attorney race up in Arlington, he spent $4 million. So this is a guy that believes that he can buy and pay for virtually anyone or anything, which with $60 billion in your bank account, I'm sure is not out of the realm of possibility. But we've talked about, socialism, the entire construct of socialism, and how it's actually a failed concept. But on the other side of that, sphere, you have Michael Bloomberg, who's willing to spend an ungodly sum of money. I mean, $10,000 per vote. What do you think happens on Super Tuesday? He's going into a couple of states that have very diverse populations. His policies with stop and frisk are, I would say, ick. That's not anything that I would want to run on, especially, to African American voters in Alabama or Georgia or South Carolina. What do you think happens on Super Tuesday?
I think on Super Tuesday, everyone realizes his campaign is over and he's wasted his money. Here's why. I was trying to watch the hockey game last night. By the way, the Capitals lost again. Very sad.
Very sad.
But I was inundated with at least, I counted 7 to 8 Bloomberg commercials over the course of 2 hours. Same commercial over and over again. So I had to watch it. And you know what? He's not running on anything other than don't vote for Trump.
Well, what's interesting about these ads is that essentially it's President Obama speaking in the ad and pictures of Michael Bloomberg. I mean, you got to give the guy credit. It's genius. I mean, Joe Biden should have done this. You just have President Barack Obama narrate your campaign ads. It's astonishing that they're letting him get away with this.
I'm not sure it's genius because let me tell you why. The ads that he ran last night didn't feature the former president. It was the ad where the boxing ring was empty, and he talked about we have to defeat a bully, and Mike knows how to defeat a bully. Now, if that's your electoral premise, that the president's a bully and I know how to defeat a bully, people are not voting for you, hypothetically, for some idea or some hope. Even with Clinton, we had the man from Hope. With Barack Obama, we had Hope and Change. Mm-hmm. With President George H.W., 1,000 points of light. Beacon, shining city on the hill, Reagan. All these
Trump, make America great again.
Trump, make America. Everybody was running on hope and optimism. None of the Democratic candidates are running on any story or narrative other than I hate Trump.
Yep.
So people aren't going to vote for you unless you are selling them an idea. The only one actually who is selling any kind of an idea, albeit a rapacious, terrible idea of socialism, is Bernie Sanders, which is why I think he has so much support. Other than that, the rest of the candidates aren't selling anything, which is why I think Michael Bloomberg's little charade is going to come up on Super Tuesday and come to a quick end.
Well, there's something I'd like to dive into there about the bullying. But once again, I just want to reintroduce you, Eric, to all the new listeners joining in. This is Mike Rubino guest hosting the John Fredericks Radio Show. We have Eric Bovim, president of Avisa US, a public affairs guru in Washington, D.C., diving back into Michael Bloomberg and this ad that you saw last night. I think it's very interesting that he's running on, I can take on a bully, when in fact, I watched him get bullied, you watched him get bullied, all over that debate stage. I mean, if this is the guy that's going to stand up to bullies, he didn't stand up to bullies on the debate stage. How is he going to stand up to Donald Trump, even if we were to call Donald Trump a bully, which I don't think he is. I think he's just a brilliant debater.
Well, let's take that to another level. So I agree with you that none of them are going to hold a candle to Donald Trump, who, by the way, I remember his first debate, the Republican primary. I think there was something like 10 or 14 candidates on the stage, and they were all attacking the president, who dominated them all somehow. I don't think we realize how difficult that was for him to do. When you watch one candidate get himself slowed down and stammering because two candidates are picking on him. But let's ask this question. how is hypothetical President Bloomberg or President Pete, or I call her Shaky Amy, how are they going to do well with Vladimir Putin? How are they going to do well with Mohammed bin Salman? How are they going to do well with all of the other autocrats and dictators and tough guys of the world, not to mention members of the G7? How are they going to stand up and hold themselves in private with those people? They're going to get pushed around and told what to do.
Well,
that's, I think Trump
you're completely correct.
Internationally.
Amy's going to shake and quiver and tremble and probably not remember any of their names because she couldn't remember the Mexican president's name.
Exactly.
Mayor Pete's going to have to go sit at the kids' table at whatever global summit he's at. Joe Biden is going to continually say number one and number two, and that's going to get old pretty quickly. I don't think a world leader is going to enjoy hearing him recite the numbers of and then his little points that he can barely remember. Michael Bloomberg's going to get by on snark, which no one likes. And then, Bernie and Elizabeth Warren, I think they might get along very well with the communists and the socialists of the world. But I don't think that our allies are going to love them.
Just imagine the meeting with, pick your Democrat candidate with President Xi Jinping of China. How's that going to go? Imagine Mayor Pete walking into Beijing to have a meeting with essentially a dictator of a massive country, the world's second largest country, hugely populous country, powerful, a country that wants to defeat us. Mm-hmm. And let's talk about that, by the way. I think that healthcare is important, and I think we should talk about it. We should try to address the healthcare disparities in this country. But the fact that debate spent 20, 25 minutes on healthcare and never even mentioned, as your next guest will talk about, the actual existential threat to America, which is China.
Mm-hmm.
None of the candidates are talking about the fact that American idealism, Western democracy, and capitalism are at risk over the next 100 years because of the China project that everyone has aided and abetted and propped up. And now we're at a point where we can't really wean ourselves off China. We're addicted to it. We're addicted to the free money. Our companies are addicted to the market where they sell their products. And we take what they give us. If they want to censor our companies over there, as Michael Bloomberg said on CNBC a couple years ago, we have to abide by their local rules. If they want to throw Muslims in camps like the Uyghurs, which is what they did a year ago, mm-hmm. we don't do anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
Our cancel culture stops as soon as it hits the Chinese border.
That's exactly right. We have one more minute left, Eric, so I want to just give you a minute to plug whatever you want to. What website can people find you on? Where can they go read anything you've written? How can they engage with you? I mean, I think that there's business leaders across Virginia that could genuinely use public affairs help. You're eloquent, you're articulate, you understand exactly what's going on in Washington, D.C. and around the world. So take 30 seconds and plug away.
Well, you can find me on our website, which is avisapartners.com. I also want to plug my good friend and hero, Alex Ovechkin,
mm-hmm.
who is one goal away from hitting 700 in his career. That would put him on 7th all-time in the NHL. He's one game away from doing it, and, Mike, I think he'll do it at home Sunday against Pittsburgh.
Are you going to be there?
I haven't decided yet. I need to make sure I save my money for if Bernie wins, I have a stockpile to survive the winter.
Pinch those pennies, Eric. Thanks so much for joining us on the John Fredericks Radio Show.
Thank you, Mike.